Crikey, mates. Over here, we have a very, very nice specimen of the cobia fish. Take a look. Let's get an underwater view.
Cobia fish are not a very attractive specimen of the Canidum species, with a lower jaw that overlaps the upper jaw and a brown slender body with small eyes and a flattened head. The cobia fish also have a very unique organ called the otolith organ. The otolith, also called the ear stone, is a calcium-based organ near the back of the brain of some species of fish, in this case the cobia. There are three types of otolith organs in fish: the sagitta, which is used for detection of sound, the asteriscus, which is used for hearing, and the lapillus, which is used for detection in gravitational forces, balance, and sound detection.
Crikey, mates. In order to lure it out, I'm going to use its favourite snack, some nice crab. This is what it eats primarily in the wild. Here we go. As it swims confuciously, looking around for the bait. Oh, it sees it. Oh, amazing! The speed and agility. Look at the size. Look at the size of its chompers.
Being the carnivorous fish that they are, the cobia can be found feeding on snappers, eel, croakers, mullet, herring, and most commonly crab. They will often hunt in shallow waters during migration and travel in schools of up to 100 fish or as little as 3 fish. Here we can see the food web for the cobia species. At the top of the food web, you can see the human, a tertiary consumer, meaning that the tertiary consumer only consumes carnivorous or secondary consumers. The cobia species, being a secondary consumer, which is consumed by the human, also consumes the crab, the mullet, and the herring, which are primary consumers. The mullet and the herring also both consume the zooplankton, which is a primary consumer as well. Now the crab, the mullet, and the zooplankton all consume the algae, which is a producer, meaning that they get the most energy from photosynthesis and pass this energy down 10% through each level of the food web. And in the upper corner, you can see the hagfish, which is a decomposer, meaning that this animal gets all of its energy from decomposing matter and consuming this decomposing matter and recycling this back into the food web.
Crikey, mates. Here we see another specimen of the cobia fish in the middle of its migration. Take a look. Look at that agility. Crikey. What a fine specimen of fish.
Located in tropical and subtropical waters, usually at temperatures above 68 degrees, the cobia are more commonly known to be native to all of Florida's marine environment surrounding that peninsula. Cobia can also be found in parts of the eastern Atlantic Ocean, near Morocco, South Africa, and parts of the Indian Ocean.
However, mates, the cobia fish has been facing some challenges with ocean acidification, like its favourite snacks are being eaten or dying off because of this.
A population of this species can be seen thriving in some areas. However, the cobia species, along with many other species of fish, are facing the effects of ocean acidification. Here is a graph of data collected by Dr. Peter Tans of NOAA Earth System Research Laboratory and Dr. David Carl of the University of Hawaii. The graph indicates that as the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere rose in Mauna Loa from 1958 to 2008, so did the amount of CO2 in the Aloha Sea. One can also see that as the PCO2 in the ocean increased, the ocean pH lowered by about 8.11 pH to about 8.08 pH. This is because the CO2 in the ocean is converted into an acidic or corrosive carbonic acid. This is different from CaCO3 that shellfish use to build their shells, and the carbonic acid inhibits the ability of shellfish to develop shells, therefore making shellfish more susceptible to their natural threats and leading to the disease in their survival rate. Not all the effects of ocean acidification are bad, however. For instance, the otolith organ is improved by ocean acidification, showing a significant increase of mass in this hearing organ. This can increase the hearing range of this species up to 50%, thus benefiting the Cobia species. However, the ocean acidification severely damages the ecosystem of the cobia fish. The lowering of the pH in the water is killing off the species of prey that the cobia use for survival, thus limiting the carrying capacity of the cobia's environment and driving cobia to starvation. In order to save this species, we must find a new source of energy, rather than using the fossil fuels that could pollute our planet into extinction.
In order to reduce the CO2 emissions that pollute the Earth and acidify the ocean, we can use alternative sources of energy which produce less CO2. An example of an energy like this is wind energy. Let's take a look at how wind energy works. The first step to creating wind energy is constructing a wind turbine. The most common type of turbine is called an upwind horizontal axis wind turbine, or HAWT for short. These are the types of turbines that most people think of when discussing wind energy. The HAWT is generally favored over the vertical wind turbine because it is more efficient and is more structurally reliable than the vertical turbine, which is more susceptible to energy loss and to breaking. The HAWT turbine foundation is made of reinforced concrete. Reinforced concrete is concrete poured and pressed around a steel bar grid for extra support. The hollow steel turbine base is then positioned over the foundation and constructed upwards, reaching heights of over 300 feet in some cases. Hollow plastic blades designed in a reverse fan structure to catch wind are then created and hand-woven with fiberglass for the perfect balance of lightweightedness and efficiency. The blades are then attached to the rotor of the nacelle, the covering that houses the main operational equipment of the turbine. Inside the nacelle are several key components. The rotor is what the blades are attached to. When the blades rotate, the rotor spins and powers the low-speed drive shaft. The low-speed shaft does not move quickly enough to generate electricity, so it first enters a gearbox. In the gearbox, a larger gear is turned by the low-speed shaft and turns a smaller gear, which turns much faster. The small gear powers a high-speed drive shaft, which then powers an induction generator to turn mechanical energy into electrical energy. The turbine's nacelle is also equipped with a wind vane, anemometer, controllers, and a yaw motor in order to face the wind when the direct wind direction changes. This prevents situations where the turbine is generating no electricity because it is facing out of the wind. So now that we understand how wind energy works, let's consider the benefits and drawbacks of wind energy. The first drawback is that some people consider wind turbines to be unsightly.
Those windmills sure are ugly.
And although some people feel as though the sight of windmills will make their heads explode, the argument that windmills are ugly is a highly opinionated argument, and it has not been proven that the majority of people find windmills not to be visually appealing. Another, more substantiated drawback of wind energy is that many people find windmills to create noise pollution.
Man, those windmills, the sound just feels like my ears are bleeding.
However, in truth, windmills are only really loud at the base of the turbine, where they can sound as loud as a lawnmower in some conditions. But wind turbines are never sited closely to houses, and are required to be sited at least 300 meters from the nearest house. Beyond this distance, the turbines are only as loud as a running refrigerator, or about 40 decibels, and should not be a huge nuisance for most. We are also concerned with the cost of wind turbines, but over the last 30 years the cost of wind turbines have decreased significantly as manufacturers find cheaper ways to achieve the same efficiency in wind turbines. Here's a graph showing how the cost of wind turbines in cents per kilowatt hour has decreased from about 55 cents per kilowatt hour in 1980 to about 6 cents per kilowatt hour in 2012. At the same time, wind energy usage has been increasing exponentially, yet prices remain lower. This is because, unlike fossil fuel generators, wind turbines have very low running costs. The only way in which wind energy could be more costly than fossil fuel power is in the cost of initial installment and the construction of the turbine. Therefore, it is ultimately cheaper to use wind energy when looking for sustainable energy. Perhaps one of the largest drawbacks of wind energy is the negative effect it has on the bat and bird populations. In the US, it is estimated that about 888,000 bats and about 573,000 birds die each year in collisions with wind turbine blades. Watch this demonstration on how a bat could be killed by a wind turbine's rotating blades. The same is true for birds. Such a high death toll has decreased the populations of both bats and birds, including many raptors, in the US. However, there are some present-day efforts to reduce the death rates of bats and birds. For instance, the American Wind Energy Association and their associated member companies, the producers of nearly 90% of American wind energy, have agreed to begin idling their wind turbines at times of low wind during the peak bat migratory season. The new practice is founded on 10 years of research on bat migratory periods and is expected to lower the bat death rate by 33% in the United States. Additionally, wind energy is thought to be an unreliable source of energy because the wind that powers it fluctuates in intensity. This is somewhat true, but such an effect can be minimized by siting wind turbines properly in places with consistent high winds. Also, as long as wind energy does not make up the entirety of the power grid, certain fluctuation in energy production will not have a massive effect on energy consumers. In order to safeguard against this, countries interested in utilizing wind energy should only allow wind energy to account for part of all power production. The US, for instance, desires to have only 20% of all energy come from wind at some point. The rest of the energy can come from other green energies like solar power in order to further reduce emissions. In the end, wind energy is a positive form of alternative power for the US. Although it may look initially like wind energy has several glaring problems, most of the issues are less impactful than many believe them to be. Windmills cannot be considered unsightly by all, are not as noisy as many believe, are less costly than fossil fuel generators, and are not so unreliable that they cannot be used, at least in part, to power a country. And although wind energy threatens some bats and birds, measures are being taken to prevent bat and bird deaths in the future. Overall, the benefits from wind energy outweigh the drawbacks, as wind energy uses a renewable resource and has been shown to significantly offset the emission of CO2. In 1990, the U.S. Department of Energy estimated that wind power in the state of California alone offset 2.5 billion pounds of CO2, or as much as 90 to 175 million trees. Wind energy continues to offset greenhouse gases and dangerous particles produced by other types of energy. As shown in the graph here, wind energy has grown to offset 96 million tons of CO2 in the US in 2013. In the end, wind energy's ability to use nearly infinite resources to offset CO2 emissions makes it worth the switch, regardless of the minor issues with wind turbines. By switching to green energy like wind power, humans can reduce the CO2 emissions that enter Earth's atmosphere and ocean, and can ultimately save species like the majestic cobia fish.